What do you do when doing the right thing puts you in danger? What do you do when people are watching, waiting for you to fail, hoping that your faith will finally cost you everything? The story of Daniel in the lion's den is not only a story about lions. It is a story about courage, about faith that refused to bend, and about a man who chose to remain faithful to God. Even when the price seemed too high, Daniel had lived through more than most people could imagine. He had been taken from his homeland as a young man and carried far away to Babylon. His city had fallen. His future had been stolen. Everything familiar had been left behind, but Daniel did not allow hardship to destroy his character. In a foreign land, surrounded by people who did not share his beliefs, Daniel remained wise, disciplined, and faithful. He worked with excellence. He spoke with integrity. He became known as a man who could be trusted. Years passed, kingdoms changed, rulers came and went, but Daniel remained. Eventually, a new ruler named King Darius took control of the empire. He appointed many officials to govern the vast kingdom, and over them he placed 3 administrators. Daniel was one of them. Very quickly, Daniel distinguished himself. He was not careless. He was not corrupt. He was not lazy. He did not use his position for personal gain. He handled responsibility with wisdom and honesty. King Darius noticed. The king saw that Daniel had an extraordinary spirit. He trusted him. In fact, Daniel was so capable that the king planned to place him over the entire kingdom, but not everyone was happy about Daniel's success. Other officials watched him closely. They searched for mistakes. They looked through his work. They examined his decisions. They hoped to find something they could use against him, but they found nothing. Daniel was faithful in his work. There was no corruption in him, no dishonesty, no hidden scandal, and so the officials realized something dangerous. They said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man unless it has something to do with the law of his God." They could not attack Daniel's character, so they decided to attack his faith. They went together to King Darius and flattered him. "May the king live forever," they said. All the leaders of the kingdom agreed that the king should issue a decree. For the next 30 days, no one should pray to any god or man except you, O king. Anyone who breaks this law should be thrown into the lion's den. It sounded like a simple law, a law that would make the king feel honored, a law that would make the officials look loyal. But it was a trap, and King Darius did not see it. He signed the decree under the law of the Medes and Persians. Once a decree was signed, it could not be changed. The trap was set. Now, Daniel had a decision to make. He could stop praying for 30 days. He could close his window. He could hide his faith. He could tell himself that it was only temporary. He could say, "God understands. I will pray silently. I will wait until this danger passes." But Daniel knew something important. Faith is not only about what we believe when life is easy. Faith is revealed by what we do when obedience becomes costly. When Daniel learned that the decree had been signed, he went home. He did what he had always done. He went upstairs to his room. He opened his windows toward Jerusalem, and 3 times that day, Daniel got down on his knees and prayed to God. He gave thanks. He asked for help. He remained faithful. The officials were waiting. They rushed into Daniel's house and found him praying. Then they went straight to King Darius. "Did you not sign a decree?" they asked, "that no one may pray to any god or man except you for 30 days? The king answered, "Yes, the decree stands." Then they said, "Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king. He still prays to his God 3 times a day." The moment King Darius heard this, he understood. He had been deceived. Daniel was not the problem. The officials had used the king's pride to set a trap for an innocent man. The king was deeply distressed. He spent the entire day trying to find a way to save Daniel. But the law could not be changed. As the sun began to set, Daniel was brought before the king. Imagine that moment. Daniel stood before the ruler of the greatest empire in the world. The lion's den waited nearby. The officials stood satisfied, believing they had finally won. But Daniel did not beg them for mercy. He did not deny his God. He did not become bitter. King Darius looked at him and said, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." Then Daniel was taken to the lion's den. It was not a storybook place. It was a dark pit of stone, a place of fear, a place where men were sent to die. Daniel was lowered into the Darkness. The stone was rolled over the entrance. The king sealed it with his own ring. No one could open it. No one could change the sentence from the outside. It seemed that Daniel's story was over, but God was already in the darkness. That night, King Darius could not sleep. He returned to his palace, but there was no music, no feast, no comfort. His mind was filled with the image of Daniel being lowered into the lion's den. The king had power, he had wealth, he had soldiers, but he could not save the one man he trusted. All night, he waited for morning. The first light of dawn. King Darius rushed to the lion's den. He came near the entrance and called out in anguish, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" For a moment, there was silence. Then a voice came from the darkness, "O king, live forever." Daniel was alive. He said, "My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight." The king was overwhelmed with joy. He ordered Daniel to be lifted from the den, and when Daniel was brought up, there was not a wound on him, not one bite, not one broken bone, not one mark of the knife. He had survived. Why? Because Daniel had trusted in his God. The men who planned Daniel's destruction had expected the lions to end his life. Instead, their plot became the moment when Daniel's faith was seen by the entire kingdom. King Darius then wrote to all the people of his empire. He declared that everyone should respect the God of Daniel. He said that Daniel's God is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed. His rule will never end. Daniel survived the lion's den. But the greatest miracle was not only that the lions did not harm him. The greatest miracle was that Daniel's faith did not weaken before he ever entered the den. Daniel had already chosen whom he would serve, long before the decree was signed, long before the enemies made their plan, long before the lions waited in the darkness. And that is the question this story leaves with us. What will we do when faith costs us something? Will we compromise when people pressure us? Will we hide what we believe when it becomes inconvenient? Or will we remain faithful even when we cannot see how the story will end? Daniel did not know that God would send an angel. He did not know that the king would run to the den at dawn. He did not know that his story would inspire generations. He only knew that God was worthy of trust, and that was enough. Sometimes, the lion's den is not a real pit filled with lions. Sometimes it is a difficult season, a job where doing the right thing costs you, a relationship that tests your patience, a fear that keeps you awake at night, a situation where you feel alone, trapped and powerless. But the same God who was with Daniel in the darkness is still faithful today. The den may be dark, the pressure may be real, the outcome may be uncertain, but faith does not mean you will never face lions. Faith means you are never alone when you do. Daniel's story reminds us that God is still able to close the mouths of fear, silence the voices of accusation, and bring hope into places that seem impossible. So stand firm, pray faithfully. Do what is right, and trust God with the rest, because sometimes the place that looks like the end of your story becomes the place where your faith shines the brightest.